Tim,
So-
next time Shane's not there when the show starts, start talking.
It's Shane.
My wife-
I couldn't even see anything.
My Wi-Fi decided to absolutely shit the bed right before we went live, so I had to switch to my data.
This is why Canada sucks.
Yeah, apparently. Well, this is how I greeted you before the show. I'm going to greet you again, Tim. What's up, you American son of a bitch?
Just living the dream. Living the dream. Boston is first in the division, so that's a fucking win.
Living the dream in the beautiful Rhode Island, hey? Boston is first in the division, yes. They had a big win against Philly last night. Pasternak, 3 goals, 1 assist.
Yeah. Edmonton sucks ass, though. They'll never win a playoff series.
3-game winning streak, baby. Against,
Yeah.
I mean, two against Ottawa. That doesn't count, really. You can't even count Ottawa as a team.
Against the worst team in the league. So, yeah, what do you do? Won 3 games.
But yes, they do suck. Welcome to Inside the Ice, guys. As always, I'm Shane, the favorite of the show, with my less superior counterpart, Tim, to my left. We got a lot to talk about. It's been 2 weeks since we went live. We weren't able to go live last week because of scheduling issues. Lots to talk about, Tim, hey?
Yeah, absolutely. So where do you want to start? What division do you want to start in?
Well, let's go with the North Division. You got to start with Canada, obviously.
Oh. What fucking prejudice or anything else?
All right, so we're going to go to the North Division here. Montreal Canadiens. Have they looked good or have they looked good?
Yeah, this is about the best they've looked since I think the last time they made it to the playoffs.
Yeah.
Like
crazy good. 7 wins in their first 10 games. They're 7-1-2, tied with Boston for the first in the league. Now,
plus 17 goal differential too.
Plus 17 goal differential, yes. And not only that, you have Montreal number 1, Boston number 2. Could you maybe, I mean, it's obviously way too early, but could you maybe see, what would you do if there was a Montreal-Boston Stanley Cup final? Just like old times.
That would be fucking beautiful. I just hope that by then we can get some fans in the arenas, but I guess the beauty in all of this is we might get some good playoff hockey.
Right.
Like if we could get a Boston Montreal Stanley Cup Finals, that would be unreal.
Absolutely. Boston Montreal would be great. I'd like to say even Toronto Boston, but we all know how Toronto does in playoffs. So I don't think that's going to happen. But one thing that I want to see in the playoffs now, especially since there's a 25% chance of a Canadian team making the Stanley Cup final. One thing that I want to see in the first round of playoffs, 4 Canadian teams going at it. I want to see a Edmonton versus Calgary. You love the Battle of Alberta in the regular season. Wait till you get those fireworks in playoffs.
Yeah, well, that's kind of a long shot right now, considering that Edmonton is barely in the playoffs. But
true, and Calgary's not. But yeah, that North Division, and then you got Toronto at 7-2-1. They are playing right now. You also have Winnipeg, surprising a lot of people, in 3rd place. Edmonton in 4th. And then Vancouver 5th. Calgary 6th, and Ottawa 7th. 1-8-1 to start the year. Ottawa looks brutal.
Yeah, and I might have been optimistic, but I thought they were going to be somewhat decent.
Yeah.
Guess fucking
they made some good signings. Like they signed Evgeny Dadonov from Florida. They made a late pickup with Derek Stepan. They signed Braden Coburn I didn't think was that bad of a defenseman, but Jesse Puljujarvi broke his ankles last game, just completely demolished him on that individual effort for his first goal of the season, and now he's on waivers.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I didn't think the Senators did that bad. And then, like, of course, like Cedric Paquette, they picked up. But, yeah, they are not looking good at all to start the season.
What's surprising to me is Winnipeg. Like, I did not expect Winnipeg to be in the top four. Like, they're a solid team, but in the top four, and right now they're playing pretty hot. They're 6-3-1 in their last 10 games.
Now, I want to talk about Winnipeg for a second here. There was a lot of stuff going on. Blake Wheeler is now on the second line ever since the Jets shipped off Patrick Laine to Columbus. Now, a lot of people were saying up here, because I live about 5 hours away from Winnipeg, a lot of people were saying that Laine was the reason why Winnipeg hardly had success. And now that he's gone, they will really kind of find their stride and finish in the top three in the division. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't think so. I really don't think so.
I mean, he's a great goal scorer. Columbus is lucky to have him.
But I could definitely see him getting easily into a beef with, like, Tortorella. Like,
absolutely.
If he doesn't fit in with Winnipeg, there's no way that Torts isn't going to absolutely roast him one playoff game. Like,
yeah.
And, like, if whatever Paul Maurice was doing that was shipping him out of Winnipeg, whatever Torts is going to do is 10 times worse than that.
And, I mean, you and I both know, and everyone watching knows, that John Tortorella is probably the most hard-nosed coach in the league. He doesn't put up with any shit whatsoever. So, yeah, he's not going to put up with anything like that. There's a reason why Pierre-Luc Dubois wanted out. He was just being, after John Tortorella benched him for whatever reason that was, whether he wasn't playing good or whatever, he just lost his confidence. He threw a fit and he wanted out of Columbus. Now, do you think Pierre-Luc Dubois excels in Winnipeg with the forward core of Scheifele, Wheeler, Connor, Ehlers?
I don't think that's necessarily what Winnipeg needs right now. You know, like, it's not like Winnipeg got the same player that they gave up with Patrick Laine.
Yeah.
Columbus got a sniper on the wing, whereas Winnipeg just got, I feel like, a solid two-way forward that they don't necessarily need to excel.
Right. I mean, there is obviously big differences. Laine is known more as a goal scorer. Dubois is known more as a playmaker. So, like that being said, Dubois might be what Winnipeg needs. They already got playmakers like I said, Scheifele, Wheeler, Ehlers. But there's not really a proven goal scorer on Columbus right now. You can maybe argue Cam Atkinson, or Oliver Bjorkstrand, maybe. But Patrick Laine is going to add some much-needed scoring depth to the Columbus Blue Jackets. I think that's a great pickup for them. But, again, it all goes towards his attitude situation if John Tortorella puts up with it, because we both know he doesn't put up with any crap.
No, absolutely not. And if you look at the standings right now, they've played 11 games and they're in 5th place in the Central Division.
Yeah, for sure.
They're 4-4-3, so it's not like they're having the greatest season. In that division, you've just seen Tampa Bay each game just go right to the top of the standings.
And, I mean, it is still early, obviously. 11 games out of a 56-game season.
Yeah,
tons
absolutely.
of time to turn it around. But yeah, I think, Laine and Dubois are both getting to that point where they've completed their 2-week quarantine period, and they'll be in the lineups for their new teams probably within the next game or two. But yeah, and then another situation going on as we shift over to the East Division, New York Rangers and Tony DeAngelo. For those of you that are watching that probably may not have heard of this, that live under a rock maybe, Tony DeAngelo put on waivers by the New York Rangers. The Rangers GM came out and said he most likely will not play another game in a Rangers uniform. So that basically means you have to force a trade. But with Tony DeAngelo's history, with these rumors flying around that he got into a fight with Alexander Georgiev and Chris Kreider at practice, what are your thoughts on this? Do you think, like, is there any team in the league that's going to take a chance on D'Angelo? Do you think maybe he gets shipped off to the KHL? What do you think?
I mean, I've seen articles that are saying that teams are interested in him as a player, but I don't think many teams want to bring him on with the publicity.
Mm-hmm. He's got attitude problems. There's no denying that.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. His best bet would probably be to go to Europe or the KHL for a year or two.
Mm-hmm.
If he shines there, then maybe he can find himself back here. But I think he really fucked up right here because he was in New York City, one of the best franchises to be a part of, and now they're doing anything to get rid of him.
Yeah, and honestly, like this kind of ties into that whole Columbus situation that we were talking about prior to this. I think if Tony DeAngelo is going to find his way back to an NHL team, it's going to be to like a team like Columbus or Philadelphia because Torts won't put up with his shit, and Alain Vigneault, the head coach of the Philadelphia Flyers, definitely won't put up with him either. So I think if he's going to find his way back into the NHL, I think for now, like you said, go to Europe, go to the KHL, then maybe next season some team brings him in on a PTO. But I think for Tony DeAngelo's sake, he has to go to a team with a hard-nosed coach like that lays the law down. Okay, no bullshit. We take you in like this. You do good, we'll let you play.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, New York Rangers, again, saw a tweet the other day after the New York Rangers beat Pittsburgh Penguins 3-1. Saw a tweet from multiple Rangers fans saying that was the best game, the best all-around game the Rangers have played all season. Coincidentally, that was the first game the Rangers played without Tony DeAngelo. So do you think, like, the more I think about it, DeAngelo's attitude may have affected the locker room, and maybe that was the weight holding the Rangers down. Like, it all kind of, you'll have to see from here, because if the Rangers go on a winning streak in one of the hardest divisions where you have the Capitals, Penguins, Flyers, Bruins, it's going to be interesting to see, because maybe it was his attitude that was in the locker room getting into players' heads.
And like like what one negative vibe can do.
Yeah.
Like it completely destroy a locker room. So who knows?
Yeah.
But like the whole point is who is he? Like I've never heard of him before this. So what would make like his role be such an important role in the locker room?
Mm-hmm.
It's not like it was the captain bringing down the entire team.
Like,
we've never heard of this guy until this incident, and I get what you're saying, but I don't know. I just don't think that this was the sole like cause of the Rangers suffering. I think now the Rangers are in the middle of a rebuild, so they're gonna be hot and cold every once in a while, and they're probably gonna be hot moving forward for the next couple months once they get rid of him. But who knows if that was the actual cause of them not getting off to a good start.
Yeah, and I mean, it's all going, like, the Rangers obviously are in the outside looking in because, like I said, they're in the same division as a ton of competitive teams, especially when you play the Penguins, Capitals, Bruins, Flyers, Islanders. You play them all 8-9 times in a season this year. So they're definitely on the outside looking in. Rangers, before the start of the season, they were my dark horse team to make the playoffs. I don't think, from what I've seen from their first 9-10 games, I don't think that's going to be the case anymore. There's just, like, the Flyers are too strong, the Bruins are strong, the Capitals are strong, and that leaves room for one more team, which probably is going to be Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
So, yeah, like, I just don't really see it happening.
And the whole thing is the Islanders made it to the conference finals last year, I believe. Yeah. But they are suffering right now and scoring goals. They cannot score goals for their life. Like, yeah, they have a solid defense and a solid goalie, but if you can't get 1 or 2 goals a game, you're not going to win many hockey games.
Yeah, and I mean, that's just it, right? I mean, you can only win so many of those 2-1, 2-0 games, right? You do have to have some of those games where you score 4, 5, 6 goals a night to solidify the victory, and that's the making of a good team. You know, a good team is one that can shut people down defensively and be able to score those 4, 5, 6 goals on any given night, right? Those are the championship teams. Now, speaking of which, I'm going to shift back to the North Division real quick here. I want to talk about the Montreal Canadiens. Tyler Toffoli on an absolute tear. 9 goals, leads the league in goals right now. One name in the league that I thought never would be leading the league in goals.
Yeah.
How like great did this guy end up benefiting the Montreal Canadiens?
I think he's like 75% of the reason why they're doing so good. Mm-hmm. He came from a LA Kings team that was in the gutter.
Yeah, he was from Vancouver. He went from LA to Vancouver. He went from LA
to Vancouver.
Yeah.
To Montreal, and now he's lighting it up. He looks like he's in his prime.
Yeah.
Major reason why Montreal is having so much success.
And Jeff Petrie. Jeff Petrie's another one too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And Jeff Petrie's a former Oiler that the Oilers fans ran out of town, so I'm kind of pissed about that.
That whole team is playing lights out right now, honestly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes me scared to face Montreal in the future for sure. Luckily for the Oilers, they got the Battle of Alberta on Saturday. So looking forward to that, and then they got 2 more games against Ottawa. But Montreal is a scary team right now. You know, I don't think really any team in the North Division is looking forward to facing them. And then you've got the 2 league leader in points, Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, that are just in another world completely. 24 and 22 points. 24 for McDavid, 22 for Draisaitl. These guys are unreal. I saw something on TSN. Get this, Tim. Anaheim Ducks in their first 11 games now have scored as a team 48 points. Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid in their first 10 games have 46 points between the 2 of them. So those 2 guys have almost the same number of points as the entire Anaheim Ducks team.
How big of a load did that result in your pants when you read that?
I'm actually good. They're dry right now. Believe it or not. But yeah, like it's crazy. Draisaitl had that 6 assist game in that 8-5 victory against Ottawa. I mean, those 2 guys are on another level. It's crazy.
It does help that you just played 3 games in a row against Ottawa.
Mm-hmm. 2, but yeah. And speaking of the Anaheim Ducks now, we're going to talk a little bit about that division. The Ducks are sitting in 5th place, just outside of a playoff spot. You're going to have to prompt me here, Tim, because my Wi-Fi went down right before the show, so I don't have my internet up at the moment. But Anaheim, I believe, at the start when I looked, was in 5th place. San Jose's doing a lot better than expected.
What do you mean? 3-5-0? They're in last place.
Okay, then it wasn't San Jose. Maybe. Never mind. Maybe it was LA. I'm not sure. I don't really follow that division, to be honest.
The West Division right now, St. Louis is in first with 15 points.
Yeah.
Colorado is tied with 15 points. Minnesota with 12.
Minnesota, that was the one. Minnesota was the one.
12.
Yeah.
Like, I did not expect them to even be in contention.
Yeah, like I thought, I mean, Vegas, St. Louis, Colorado were obvious choices for me. But then I was looking at possibly San Jose or LA clinching a 4th spot. Minnesota to be in 3rd place with 12 points is a great accomplishment so far for that team.
Oh, absolutely. They're 6-5-0 and they're even on the goal differential. So
yeah,
I feel like that's a plus for what was expected of them. Because you have a team like Arizona, they were expected to be in playoffs. They're 3-5-1. Like, they are not playing up to what they were expected to at all in that division.
Arizona, I think believe it or not, after they got rid of Taylor Hall, I think that team was kind of heading for a rebuild. I at the start of the season, I did not see Arizona as good as they were last year, and they weren't even that great last year. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's fair enough. You're in the like you would know.
Yeah, the 3 California teams are, of course, out of playoffs again. All 3 of those are heading for a rebuild. LA Kings are getting older. They've got, Jeff Carter, Anze Kopitar, Drew Doughty. All those guys are getting older. They're all, in their mid to late 30s. I think it's time for LA to, maybe hopefully Quentin Byfield, the second overall pick of the 2020 NHL draft, can, maybe turn some heads there for LA. But yeah, Vegas looking good. Mark Stone and Max Pacioretty leading the charge there for Vegas. St. Louis in first place, so they're looking really, really good. And Colorado, of course, is deadly as always.
But the thing you have to take note of is Vegas. Yeah, they're in fourth. They've only played 7 games.
Yeah.
St. Louis has played 10. Colorado and Minnesota have both played 11.
Yeah.
So COVID is definitely making the standards a lot worse than they normally are.
And COVID has to, I feel so sorry for the guy in charge of scheduling right now in the NHL, because you have all these teams having COVID outbreaks left, right, and center. The NHL came out today and they're exploring all these new options to try to contain the COVID outbreaks. They actually even today they just announced they were going to remove the glass from behind the players' benches to allow for more airflow. And they're making players in the locker room sit 6 feet apart and wear masks while they lace up.
That's incredible.
So, I mean, what are your thoughts on this, Tim? Do you think the NHL finishes off the season? I mean, I know there's so many people that are looking more excited about the season.
It's more and more teams. At first, it's oh, what's a couple games for a couple teams in our division? But when every single division is having games postponed,
except for the North Division, believe it or not, Canada has not canceled any games yet.
All right. We can pump the brakes, Shane. We can pump. When the divisions that matter are postponing games,
divisions that matter. But yeah, I think the New Jersey Devils are out right now. Hurricanes are still out. I think the Golden Knights postponed a few games.
The Buffalo Sabres head coach has COVID right now.
Yeah, and I mean, what can you do, really? The NHL's got to test out all these options. Like I said, the players are going to be sitting 6 feet apart. The glass behind the bench is taken out. If this doesn't get any better, Tim, can you see the NHL maybe calling it?
They're not a league that has a ton of funding. So if this is going to put the league in a position where they're going to have to claim bankruptcy, then I wouldn't be surprised. But I just don't know how close they are to that point,
Right, and I think they're going to try to test out every option before the fact. There are those teams. I know there's fans allowed in Arizona. There's fans allowed in Dallas. Limited capacity, obviously, but they're not getting a whole lot of revenue as a league. Probably 27 out of the 31 arenas have no fans.
Exactly.
And the division names are advertised. There's advertisements on the helmets. So as you said, a league with hardly any funding, they still got to pay their players. The players aren't going to play without getting paid.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So yeah, they got to test out these different options to try to get this league going. The National Women's Hockey League completely canceled their season right before playoffs.
Yeah.
Because of concerns of COVID.
That's not good for them at all. They were already fighting on the brink of existence, and now they have to cancel it because of COVID.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and AHL is still not going. So it's where do you draw the line here?
We're definitely way past the point of fucking up prospects' careers.
Mm-hmm.
Because you don't just not play an entire year while you're in the middle of making it to the NHL.
And that's the thing.
now we're telling people that are on the verge of making it to the NHL, oh, if you had a standout season, we would probably pull you up to the NHL, and if you stood out there and got some points, you'd make it to the NHL. Now you're really fucking up a lot of people's lives, and they're not making much money at all. So are you going to put these people in a ton of debt on like false hope, or what are we going to do?
That's the thing. And like, believe it or not, whether you want to believe it or not, I would say probably at least 50% of the NHL's prospects come from the Canadian Junior Leagues, WHL, OHL, and the Q. So with Canada pulling a complete pause on everything, on all things hockey, there is not one single hockey league right now in Canada that's going right now. And like you said, how do you pick prospects for the 2021 NHL draft based on that?
Like,
you're gonna have to go based. Do you go based on their performance 2 seasons back?
and it's not like, and it's just going levels and levels and levels back. Like, all right, here's this year's draft picks. Okay, here's this year's college picks. Here's this year's high school picks. Here's this year's junior picks. Like, we're delaying a lot of hockey right now.
And not only that, but the OHL, even though they're not going, another thing that really pissed me off is the OHL completely banned body checking. Completely.
Yeah, so
how do you get rid of body checking? Like, how is that going to make a prospect NHL ready? Because NHL is never going to get rid of body contact. That's a complete part of the game. So if you have these 15, 16-year-old players that are really good, they go into the OHL and are not allowed to do body contact, they're going to get their freaking asses handed to them in the NHL.
Yeah, absolutely.
So absolutely. Like I don't know how you can possibly think of doing that.
And I get like, oh, like we're gonna tone back on the concussions growing up. Well, guess what? The concussion that you're gonna get from not being in contact hockey your entire life until you go to the NHL,
when you play with the big boys in the NHL
for months, like you will be fucked for months.
Yeah, exactly. There is one more division we haven't talked about yet, Tim. That is the I can't remember if it's the Central Division or what it's called, but it's the one with the Lightning in it.
The Central Division.
Central Division, yeah. Florida Panthers and the Dallas Stars have looked unreal.
Yeah, absolutely.
Crazy unreal.
Like, the Panthers have only played 6 games, 5-0-1, plus 6 goal differential. They have one of the best win percentages in the league right now.
I think honestly that is partly on the hands of Joel Quenneville.
Oh, absolutely.
Joel Quenneville was probably the best hiring that the Panthers could have made in that position.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
once Chicago got rid of Quenneville, just Florida hire him, you'll get at least to the playoffs in the first 2 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you got a 3-time Stanley Cup winning coach. He's got one of the best winning records in the league for coaches. I mean, Florida Panthers being 5-0-1. It's just hard to believe for me because for so many years, the Florida Panthers have been a nothing team. You know what I mean? Like, they never have anyone in attendance. They're consistently the lowest in attendance every single year. And now for them to have 5-0-1, it kind of pawns the question. If this was a normal season and the Panthers were 5-0-1 to start the season, do you think that would draw more fans into the arena?
Well, I've always had a complex opinion on the Panthers because they draw fans when they're good. Mm-hmm. Like in 1996, when they went to the finals, they sold out all of their playoff games.
Mm-hmm. But people like to watch a winning team.
Yeah, but for a while, the Florida Panthers were shit. And the better they get, the more fans they draw. I don't know exactly where in Florida they play out of. I want
Miami.
to say Miami. It is Miami.
Yeah.
So in Miami, who the hell wants to go watch a hockey game? But I will give them the better that they get, the more fans they'll get. And if they can get more like big name players, then they'll probably get more attendance.
Well, that's the thing, and you hit the nail on the head there when you say Miami is 100% not a hockey city. You know, there's the Dolphins there, and there's the Marlins. They'd probably way rather go watch a football game or a baseball game. Miami Heat, yeah, exactly. But that being said, you got like it all kind of comes back to the geographical area too. Like the Boston Bruins, they got insane fans, and you know they've been good consistently for the past few years. But even if the Boston Bruins were a shit team that were sitting 31st in the NHL, they would still get 17, 18,000 in TD Garden because people in Massachusetts are crazy about hockey.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's just all.
So it all comes down to geographical area. Same with any team in Canada. Oilers have been shit for how many years, and they still get 18,000 in Rogers Place.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
Montreal will always sell out every game, no matter how bad they are.
Oh yeah, those Habs fans are nuts.
Like, just imagine their first playoff series. Like,
yeah. It's crazy for sure. Another thing that I do want to talk about too is the emergence of Carter Hart with the Philadelphia Flyers. Now, this guy is a number one goalie in the league for sure.
We beat him tonight. What about him?
I mean, okay, you beat him. Pasternak got 3 goals by him, but Boston Bruins have one line.
Okay, all right.
They have one line. Edmonton Oilers have one line. But Carter Hart, this kid is going to be a Vezina Trophy goalie in the very, very near future. I mean, you don't become the starting goalie of a 7-2-1 team if you're not good.
I would give him a couple years. I think a couple years he'll be the top goalie in the league, but he's definitely one of the main pieces of Philadelphia being a contender right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you see now shipping over to the other city in Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh, Jim Rutherford resigning from his role as GM? Now, every team pretty much has a GM, but like, do you think Jim Rutherford, since he resigned for personal reasons, do you think his career as a GM in the NHL is done, or do you think some team tries to pick him up? I'm not really aware of the whole situation there.
I honestly don't know anything more than it's a personal situation. So,
right.
Like, it really depends on what's going on. If I think he's highly capable of being a GM again. I don't think it's a matter of like whether or not he's capable of being the GM. I think it's whether or not he's like if his family situation allows for that.
Yeah, and I mean, I was there. There was a tweet that was leaked by someone from, I believe, The Athletic or something about possible new GMs to replace Rutherford in Pittsburgh. You and I know all too well, Tim. Peter Chiarelli was on that list, and you and I know all too well that you do not want to hire Peter Chiarelli if you're a Penguins fan.
Absolutely not.
You will be stuck in cap hell for God knows how long.
And yeah, you'll get a first overall pick for 4 years in a row, but you'll still be the worst team in the league.
Yeah. Patrick Laine just scored his first goal as a member of the Columbus Blue Jackets, by the way.
Nice. It's about time.
Yes. So I guess, Tim, like, what are your thoughts on the season so far? Are there any teams that are exceeding your expectations? Are there any teams that, we kind of talked about this earlier, but like teams that are exceeding your expectations, I guess, and then teams that, you thought were going to be a lot better than they were?
I mean, of course, everybody's going to say the Montreal Canadiens are being a surprise right now because who would have picked them to be in the top 4 teams in that division? But if you're going to go outside the box, I mean, how the hell is Florida after 6 games just 5-0
tearing it up? Yeah,
that team is just sticking out to me for some reason. They're definitely going to be in the playoffs. I can guarantee that right now.
Now, is Dallas doing as good as you thought they were going to do?
I think so. I mean, for a team that lost in the finals, you have that risk of a Stanley Cup hangover, and you're 5-1-1. That whole division, they've been kind of screwed over by like games being postponed due to COVID. So,
Mm-hmm.
like you're looking at 8 games, 7 games, 6 games, 7 games, only played between the top 4 teams. So you're not going to be ranked anywhere near the rest of the league right now in points because you just haven't played the same amount of games.
Yeah, that's completely true. But is Tyler Seguin on the COVID list? Because I don't think he's played a game for the Stars. Like, is he injured or is he on the COVID list?
I don't know. I know he was on the injury list after the Stanley Cup Finals
Oh
because
wow.
that Stars team was completely banged up.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, if that Stars team would have been healthy, I think they might have taken the Lightning.
Well, what makes it interesting is now they're in the same division. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and only one, like both of them can't reach the final anymore.
yeah.
So that is going to be interesting for sure. But Tampa and Dallas is definitely a possibility for that division playoff title for sure. Sam Bennett requested a trade out of Calgary. Quite honestly, I don't blame him because who the fuck wants to play in Calgary? That's me as a bitter Oilers fan. So yeah, Sam Bennett requested a trade from the Flames. He said he will not suit up for the Flames. He's going to be a healthy scratch tonight for the Flames. But there are so many teams in the NHL that could use a player like Sam Bennett. But
there's a good amount of players that Flames have that the rest of the NHL could use.
Mm-hmm, yeah. But Sam, like, this is where, like, you know, with Tony DeAngelo not playing another game for the Rangers and going to be traded if he wants to play in the NHL again, and then with Sam Bennett requesting a trade out of Calgary, this is where things get tricky because if you're Sam Bennett and you get traded to an American team, you have to do that 2-week quarantine period, right? So these top contending teams right now, like the Washington Capitals, Boston Bruins, Florida Panthers, are they really going to want to trade for a player like Sam Bennett when all their teams are gelling as a group? So then they have to give up a player just to have no impact for 2 weeks while that other player quarantines. So if you're like, what I'm trying to say, I guess, is if you're like a top team, a top American team right now, are you really going to want to risk messing with that gel that your team has and, you know, not being able to fill that void for 2 weeks so that the player that you get in return can quarantine? That's where you got to kind of think of, okay, like these teams that are rebuilding, like the Arizona Coyotes or the Anaheim Ducks, that's where these teams, you know, might come in handy.
I feel like this year for teams, it's if you're in the ball game of winning the cup, then that's a win. This isn't necessarily a year for teams that are in the rebuild to go straight to the cup. Like, no one's going to want to trade guys out of division because on top of what you just said about quarantining, like, you're only playing games interdivision. So you're going to really fuck up a lot of things. Like, I feel like this year it's just play it out with the team you have. The best team right now wins. Like, I see what, like, I can see teams being like, all right, let's trade players. But you're just going to be like, all right, you have to quarantine for 2 weeks. You have to quarantine for 2 weeks. And then now the playoffs, like, it's just going to be a messed up year for sure.
And that's the thing, right? Especially when you're in a division, an all-Canadian division, where it's as competitive as it is, you're not any team that you're going to want to trade with. You're not going to want to trade with another Canadian team because you have to play that team 8-9 times for the rest of the season, right? So that's where things get tricky because if you want to trade a player, you don't want to make the Canadian teams that you're playing against better But then you got to look to the U.S. teams, but then you got to have the player quarantine for 2 weeks when you get it. So that's why I do agree with your decision. Like if, I would just play it out and see with the team that you have.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Like, I feel like this year is definitely going to be like whoever wins, everybody will remember what the circumstances were like.
Yeah.
I just don't see a lot of trading going on this year.
And the thing that really makes me mad, I'm going to go on a little bit of a rant here, is there's so many people talking about that Stanley Cup that the Tampa Bay Lightning won in September is going to have an asterisk beside it. And there's a lot of people saying that whoever wins the Stanley Cup this year is going to have an asterisk beside it because it was not a full season and there was all these rule changes and blah, blah, blah. Now, that is a crock because the Tampa Bay Lightning won the Stanley Cup in probably the hardest playoff format in NHL history.
Mm-hmm.
They had to beat out 23 other teams compared to 15.
Yep.
So, if anything, put an asterisk beside the Tampa Bay Lightning. But that asterisk, that should be a thing of pride for beating out 7 more teams than you normally would. You know what I mean?
I agree with you on that one. Absolutely.
And that's the exact same thing with this year too. Like when you have, God forbid a Canadian team wins the Stanley Cup this year, don't put an asterisk beside that because look how stacked the Canadian division was this year. Look at some of the teams you would have had to beat out in order to get that far. Same with like the division that the Boston Bruins play in. Like if Boston goes to the Stanley Cup final, they would have had to take down 3 other teams from their own division, whether that be Washington, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Islanders, whoever. They're all good teams.
Absolutely.
And that can be said for any division. Any division like the West Division with St. Louis, Colorado, Vegas. You know what I mean? So I mean, this year especially, like last season and this season are going to be the hardest seasons probably in NHL history to win the Stanley Cup.
And like all the negatives that COVID has brought, like look at the division shakeup that it's brought on the NHL. Like the fact that we might have a Boston Montreal series in the NHL in the Stanley Cup Finals. Boston, Philly, Washington, Pittsburgh right now are in one division top 4. St. Louis, Colorado, Minnesota, Vegas, like the division rivals that are gonna be emerged from just this season format is unreal because we're only 10 to 12 games into the season, like max.
Yeah.
And we're already seeing a lot of tension. So have these teams play each other 7, 8 times in this season and then go into a playoff series. It's going to be unreal.
There's another topic that I thought about before the show here that I just remembered about when you were talking about that. Now, you have the classic NHL rivalries, Boston, Montreal, Edmonton, Calgary, Toronto, Boston could be considered one. With this realigned divisional format where you play interdivisional teams 8-9 times a year, do you think this could bring out new rivalries in teams since you play them so much?
Absolutely.
Even when like next season, if the NHL gets back to their regular 82-game season, their own other divisions beforehand, do you think like even though Boston and Philadelphia, let's say, would only play twice a season, do you think they'd have a strong rivalry based on this season?
Well, Boston, Philadelphia already has a very strong rivalry just on the 2 cities. Like it's the 2 most hated teams in the NHL going at each other. So but I think this season, particularly when it comes down to the last 3 or 4 games of the season, when it comes down to that last spot in the division,
it's going to be intensity for sure.
The intensity is going to ramp up exponentially, and I don't think it's going to be forgotten that easily because this is not a year that people are just going to forget.
It's definitely the most unique year in the NHL. I've loved what I've seen from the NHL so far this season. It's unique. granted, I would like to see, my team, the Oilers, have to play an American team because I love the games against St. Louis, Colorado, Boston. But it's definitely unique. I see a lot more of the Canadian teams than I've ever seen before, and it's definitely so much fun to watch.
It's definitely unique, but I think it's bringing a hint back of like old school NHL.
Yeah, and I mean that's exactly it. Like, the NHL is it's definitely changed from those days in the 80s, 90s when it was just fights, fights, fights. But with these renewed rivalries and these teams playing 8, 9 times in their own division, you're going to see a lot more battles. You're going to see a lot more, like you said, intensity when that starts to ramp up near the end of the season. There's going to be like that last game against Edmonton and Ottawa 2 nights ago. There was a huge brawl at the end of the game. And, now Zach Cassian and Brady Tkachuk are exchanging words. That's not going to go away easily. Like the Oilers still play the Sens 7 times this season.
Exactly. Like when you play the same team 6, 7 times, maybe even 8 times a season, what happens in the first 1 or 2 games sticks the entire year.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, for sure. There are multiple games on the NHL schedule right now. If I had my Wi-Fi working, since it went off again at the beginning of the show, I'd be able to tell you who was playing. But I know for a fact Toronto is playing Vancouver right now. And Vancouver was winning. Toronto was winning when I started the show.
Yeah.
So that's good. I mean, my Oilers need all the help they can get for sure.
Toronto is winning 5-2 over Vancouver.
Mm-hmm. No surprise there.
The Senators are beating the Canadians 3-1.
Mm-hmm. One thing that the Senators are beating the Canadians 3-1.
Yeah.
Wow.
And the Rangers are beating the Caps 2-1.
Wow. One thing that I guess did not go unnoticed up here anyways is Montreal's absolute beatdown of Vancouver. When they went to the West Coast and played Vancouver for those 3 games, they were winning like 7-1, 5-1, like just an absolute beatdown. And then Vancouver kind of returned the favor when Ottawa went to the West Coast. Vancouver was beating them like 7-1, 5-1. So, I mean, Vancouver this season is very, very streaky.
I mean, and you kind of have to expect that because between Vancouver, Calgary, and Edmonton, they made a decent amount of moves at like substantial positions. Like all of them have new goaltenders, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they do. They do for sure.
That's not just a minor change. That's not just, all right, let me put a new winger on the second and third line. No, that's your fucking goalie. Like,
yeah, absolutely. And then you have the teams that aren't really talked about a whole lot, like Anaheim Ducks. Have not heard a lot from them at all this season, because they're not really like there was that 3-4 years ago when they had Getzlaf, Perry, Kessler. They were relevant. They were good. They were a top team in the league, but they have so badly declined. They have so many, like Getzlaf is old. Silverberg he's not really old, but I mean he's got 5 points in 11 games. He leads the Ducks with 5 points in 11 games. So the Ducks, I don't know if it's a lack of production for them or if it's some coaching issues there or what's going on with them. But like I said at the beginning of the show, they have 48 total points in 11 games between the entire team.
I feel like the Ducks are the Kings where they are way past their prime, except the Ducks never won the 2 cups that the Kings won.
Yeah, absolutely. And
the same years that the Kings were really good, Ducks were right there with them.
Yeah.
But they never did anything,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then of course, like there's the Florida Panthers. They're starting to get relevant now, but it doesn't really help that there's no fans because like this would be the season that the Florida Panthers could really benefit from a high attendance.
Oh,
You know, like if they finish,
absolutely.
like if they finish like, you know, second, third in the division, like that could be intense hockey. That could be great for the Florida Panthers organization. And like same with like the New York Islanders, they're a kind of a low budgeter team that's not really talked about. They've been really good these past few seasons, kind of get their name talked about again. But Buffalo Sabres, again, like missing the playoffs 10 years, they're looking like they're going to miss the playoffs for an 11th straight year.
Yeah.
How long until Jack Eichel gets pissed off, if he's not already?
I feel like there's a similar question to how long until Connor McDavid gets pissed off. Like,
I mean, yeah, that's true. But the Oilers can at least make the playoffs. Jack Eichel, like McDavid and Draisaitl have been in the playoffs. Jack Eichel has been in the league the exact same amount of time as McDavid and hasn't seen the playoffs once.
And he's a hothead. He is no cool head. He is absolutely a hothead.
And he's not afraid to stick up for himself and yell at his team. And I mean, don't get me wrong, that's everything that you need in a captain.
Yeah, but when is his contract up? What year is his contract up?
I can't remember off the top of my head. I'd Google it, but my Wi-Fi is down.
If Buffalo doesn't do shit until his contract is up, I could definitely see him looking once it's up.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. I mean, I think that's pretty much all we have to talk about, Tim, unless you have anything else.
No, that's pretty much sums up what's going on in the NHL right now. I mean, Pastrnak, what's he got? 5 goals in 2 games?
Pastrnak has gone off. And if if Pastrnak did not miss the beginning of the season, he'd be right up there, in my opinion, with McDavid and Draisaitl near the top of the league.
Oh, no doubt.
For sure. Pastrnak is...
Give him 2 weeks.
Yeah, like Pastrnak is a superstar, don't get me wrong, but I feel like he is completely underrated. Like when you think of superstars in the NHL, you think of Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, Austin Matthews, Sidney Crosby, Alex Ovechkin. Pastrnak is not one of the names that comes to mind first.
Because he's not like, oh, I want the limelight, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he just goes about his business.
And I think that has to do with his background. Like, he's from the Czech Republic, where, like, he definitely came in not knowing a word of English, so he didn't know, like, really what to do. Like,
yeah.
And it's like, all right, I show up, I score goals.
Yeah, absolutely. His contract expired after the 2025-26 season. I'm guessing that's for Jack Eichel. So he's still in Buffalo for 5-6 years pending a trade, which I don't see happening.
No.
So I mean, if God forbid the 2025-2026 season comes and the Sabres still have not made the playoffs, Jack Eichel's gone. He's not sticking around. Yeah. He's not sticking around at all.
No way.
Yeah. So, and I mean, Buffalo, like, again, this season, not looking promising for them, especially in a division where you got the Caps, Bruins, Flyers.
It's a stacked.
I mean?
It's a stacked division.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's for sure. Anyways, that's about it for this week's episode of Inside the Ice. There will be no Behind the Basket. Both Elizabeth and Hunter are unavailable today, so stay tuned for when they go live some point this weekend, I'm assuming. Until then, barring that nothing happens in our lives, we will see you next week, Thursday.